Are you trying to return to the workforce after losing your job? Are you having a hard time charging clients what your work is worth? Then keep watching. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, host of Finance is Personal. Today, I'm joined by Belinda Aramide, sales coach and wisdom whisperer. And that she is. Belinda helps women get to that next level so that they can confidently charge their customers what they're worth and get their business to where it needs to be. But because so many women have lost their jobs recently, Belinda will have a few tips to prepare you to go back into the workforce. Belinda, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you on the show because the show focuses on women, and so many women have been affected by COVID right now with, losing their jobs or working part-time and really having a hard time making ends meet. Now, what is the first thing they should do to get job hunting ready right now?
I think the first thing is to grab a piece of paper. So if you are thinking about transitioning or you have recently or 12 months ago lost, left your job, I would suggest writing down all of the accomplishments. And it does two things. And when I say accomplishments, it's not just the awards or the pageantry, it's the the solutions that you helped to create for the organization, the ways that you helped your team, or your colleagues improve the way that they do business. Because one of the things that I notice when you are looking for work, and I've been in this position before, is you tend to really knock yourself down, and you knock yourself down a few pegs unnecessarily. So I think it's really important when you're preparing yourself to get back into the workforce to really look back on your prior positions and what are your successes? How is it that you really bring value to an organization in the future, and how did you bring value to an organization? It's going to help, increase your confidence to feel like, you know what, I am a true value to any company that I get to the honor to work with. And then also it's going to allow you to make sure that you are presenting yourself in the strongest light possible, because with the people that I work with, I often find that us high achievers tend to undervalue and underappreciate what we really do bring to the table.
And that was exactly what I was going to say right now, because no matter how accomplished you are, the imposter syndrome always sets in, and we all think that we're not as worthy or we're not as good, or there's always we're not as whatever, because we've got that negativity that dances around on our brain, right? How do we actually stop that negativity tap dancing in our head and realize that, you know what? The value that I brought to my previous job was really, really good. I worked hard and I did a good job. So how do we how do we wrap our brain around that so that we can actually put good information down on paper?
Hmm. So it's interesting because you can really get into this cycle of that negative self-talk. And one of the things that I do, and I've got 3 small kids and 2 daughters, where I'm really focused on being careful with how it is that I speak to them, because I know they'll internalize that and end up
Mhm.
speaking to themselves in that way too. And when I catch myself with a negative self-talk, I ask, would I talk to my best friend like this? Would I allow my best friend, if I was sitting there beside her and she was berating herself and really belittling herself, would I allow her to speak to herself that way? Would I allow my daughters to speak to themselves that way? And that always allows me to catch myself and to think, you know what? I don't deserve to hear this from anyone else, and I definitely don't need to do this to myself. So that's number one is, would you allow your best friend or one of your children to speak of themselves or to themselves that
Mhm.
way? And then the second thing that I like to do is um, it's almost like going back in time and thinking about those successful points in your when you were working in certain organizations, and how did you feel in that moment when something significant happened, a team win, a personal win, a triumph, when a mentor told you or said, you know what, you did a really great job, or hey, you really saved our butts. It's going back to that time, reliving that moment and saying, okay, what was I being praised for? Because it's often so easy, and again, as high achievers, to go over, "Well, where did things go wrong? What did I do? What did I do?" But it's okay, why don't you take that same energy and focus on some of the positive moments, relive those moments so you can pull what you need from those moments to highlight them and showcase them when you're sitting in front of someone and you are presenting yourself in the best light possible.
And those are so simple, but really, really important points for all of us to remember because it's very quick to go through that downward spiral. And you talked about, speaking to people. So when we're looking for a job, how do we know who the right person is to speak with? Because it's so difficult right now. Everything is online. So how do you know who to speak with?
Yeah. Well, this is where and why I absolutely love LinkedIn as a platform. So there's a couple of tricks that you can employ. So the first thing is to search hashtag hiring or just put in parentheses, I'm hiring on LinkedIn. For the companies that are in a growth phase and they're looking to add people to their team, oftentimes people will put that in their headline. And so you can go directly to the people who said in their headline, I'm hiring. And if you like the company, you can reach out to them and said, hey, I'm reaching out to you because on your profile or in your name, you said that you're hiring. I'd love to add to the marketing team or to the accounting team. Are you open to having a 15-minute call? If they're not, the right person to talk to, then they'd be more than happy to direct you to whomever it is. So that's the first action that you can take. And you can also think, you know, back to the titles of the people that you would report to.
Mhm.
So were you reporting to the director of sales or the, HR manager, whomever you were reporting to before, come up with a list of, let's say, 25 companies that you'd love to, work for. And find who you used to report directly to, find those people at those 25 companies and reach out to them and say, hey, I've got 15 years experience in XYZ, and I would love the opportunity to work at your company, and would you be open to having a really, quick 15-minute chat about what it's like working in there and who might be the right person to talk to. People, I still believe people are really good-hearted and want to help, and I've experienced the same. So don't be afraid to reach out to someone. Not everyone is going to say yes, but for every 5 no's, there's one person who will say yes, and that could be the very person who opens the door to the next phase of your career.
I tend to agree with you because I know that I have a lot of people that reach out to me. I'm sure you have a lot of people that reach out to you, and it's all about giving back, right? And, we have to mentor and we have to give back to whatever community you work in, whatever sector you work in, because we need to get that next group of people bigger and better and more successful than us. So I would like to believe that there are really good people out there that want to help the next generation or want to help somebody who is going through some tough times. And I I seem to think and feel that people are good all around, even though there's a lot of negativity and stuff out there. I think the bottom line is everyone's rooting for everybody and wants to help people out. I just want to talk about LinkedIn again because a lot of people don't really think that their profiles need to be up to date or their information has to be full. Some people don't even have a photo on LinkedIn. So, why is it so important to be totally up to speed, updated on LinkedIn, especially when you're working for a job, looking for a job, and if you're actually working?
Absolutely. So I always like to use the term, and this is something I learned much later in my career, and I'm like, gosh, I wish I learned, this sooner.
We're always
And
learning.
the adage is, oh, we're always learning, right? But the adage is the best time to build a network was yesterday. The second best time is now. So you're having a full, robust LinkedIn profile is going to allow you to build that network because you never really know when you're going to need it. You very few of us get a 6-month ramp that tells us we're going to let you go on this date and this time. So make sure that you're ready. Unfortunately, if, we're being made redundant or, we're being let go for whatever reason, business reason there is, we often don't get that runway. And so having your LinkedIn profile up to date allows you to, one, really mark your successes in your career, especially if you're at a company for a long time. It's hard enough remembering what you did 6 weeks ago, let alone being, wanting to, spruce up your LinkedIn profile and trying to remember, oh gosh, what have I done over the last 16 years? So it's almost like a digital professional journal. And then I also want people to look at LinkedIn as really just the world's largest networking event. And LinkedIn is no longer just a digital resume platform. And that used to be me. I mean, when I went back onto LinkedIn back in, 2017, I hadn't been on there in like 3 years. So believe me, I get it. But LinkedIn is now really a platform, and people are so much more open to connecting with and just building organic, true relationships with people who they've never met. And so, as I said, the second best time for you to build your network is now, because you never know. It's like an emergency fund. When you need it,
Absolutely. That's a
you're so
good
glad you didn't
analogy.
buy that latte.
So, what's important to make yourself visible to recruiters on LinkedIn?
So there are a few options that you can enable on your profile that allows you to almost put up like a sticky note on your profile for
Mhm.
recruiters. So when they go on the platform and they're looking for people who have certain skill sets or competencies or a certain number of years of experience, where you'll essentially rise to the top. Another thing, and this ties in well to the last question you asked me about why it's important to update your profile, is that they're going to be looking for keywords, right?
Mhm.
To see that you have experience in, Java, or you have experience, with P&Ls and all the things that you could potentially have a core competency in. And so when a recruiter is looking for someone with 5 years experience in X skill, if you have that highlighted on your profile, a recruiter can find you. And then if you've taken the time to update your profile, then it allows the recruiter to, in their mind, make the decision in 30 seconds whether or not you are someone who's suitable for the role. When you don't have these details, it allows the recruiter to just pass over you because all they see is your name and, you have 6 years of experience at a particular company. It's not enough for them to say, you know what, this person is a right fit for this role I'm looking to fill.
So, you talked about keywords, but there's also an algorithm that LinkedIn uses. I mean, everyone uses an algorithm now. Explain that one to us.
Yes. So if we're looking specifically at job seekers, what happens is a recruiter or even the director of sales at an organization might go into LinkedIn and do a search within the search bar for, a sales rep, for instance. And so what the algorithm does, and this is all algorithms on with all platforms, is the algorithm is trying to give each person what they think the person is looking for. Because if I go onto LinkedIn and I search for something and I get what I want, then the next time I have a need, I'll come back to LinkedIn, right? So what you want to make sure is that your profile has certain keywords that someone who would be in a hiring position would be looking for, so that your name can come up within the search results. There's also the algorithm when you talk about content, and it's the idea is the same, where when you log on to LinkedIn, your news feed is going to be different than my news feed based
Right.
on behavior. So it's creating content that people will react to, because then the algorithm feels like, oh, well, if this person likes it, then maybe this person will like it, and they'll present your content, or they, being the algorithm,
Mhm.
will present your content in someone's newsfeed. So it's interesting to say the least.
It is. And it's really interesting because you had talked about networking earlier, and that's how you and I met. You and I were
Yeah.
speaking at a wealth professional event, and I think we were speaking simultaneously. And we had
Hmm.
to go into green room to learn the system. And it was like, hi, how are you? Hey, let's reach out to each other. And here we are. And I think people underestimate how important it is. When you meet somebody, it's great to, connect on LinkedIn and then have a chat and, keep the conversation going, because here we are.
Exactly. And that's because before, for anyone who was on the LinkedIn platform in its early days, you used to need to have someone's name and their email address. It was like Fort Knox in order to add someone to your network. And now it's a lot more open. And, when you meet someone at an event online, because you and I haven't met in person, it's just a
No.
really great way to extend that welcoming and knowing a person. It's almost like when we used to be able to see people face to face, and you'd get the business card and following up by email.
Mhm.
But with LinkedIn, you allow people to just add that extra layer of really understanding who you are. And that's, again, we keep coming back to the filling out of your profile, but it again allows someone to get to know you a little bit better, and you get to tell your story.
Yeah.
And your story is so much more than just the companies and the roles that you worked for. So tell your story, because it matters.
That's really important. What you just said, tell your story. And a lot of people think that's just a marketing thing, but we're constantly marketing ourselves. We have to on a regular basis.
Mhm.
I mean, as soon as we meet somebody, we make up our mind within the first 10 seconds whether, we're going to be friends with them, we're not going to, do we like them, do we not like them? This is just the way we are. So it's really important for us to reach out, connect, and introduce each other to different friends or whatever, because that's exactly what happened with us.
Absolutely. And that's what happens when we allow and we are open to the idea that the world is good, and that intrinsically, regardless of what might be happening, politically or existentially, that that the world is just a place where people are looking to connect. And so we, one, need to be open to it, but then two, the example that I'm always, using is Nike. Nike is one of the most prolific brands out there. Everybody knows Nike, or even the
Mhm.
Nike swoosh. And yet Nike spends hundreds of millions of dollars every single year endorsing professional athletes.
Yep.
Now, why would they do that? Because Nike is just a thing, right? But the it was Tiger Woods that made people want to play golf. It's Serena Williams who made me want to pick up a tennis racket. And
Yes.
then I picked it up and said, this thing is heavy and not as all as easy as I thought it was going to be. Okay, she
On to the
really is an
next
athlete,
sport.
because yeah, on to the next one. But we connect with people, right? And so at the end of the day, as marketing help is the engine behind the brand, but people are what people are looking to connect with. And that's why companies spend money on endorsing, celebrities or whomever it might be. And because the person matters, the person behind the brand matters. And as I always tell people, you matter and your
Yeah.
story matters.
Yeah. And you are the brand.
You are. And that's the thing, no matter what company you work for, that will follow you. That is going to be the thing that you get to take. You get to take your accomplishments, and you get to take who you are. And if you do a really good job, you've earned the right to stand in your light, and to, as I always say, claim your space and claim your seat at the table.
So I'm going to switch it up a little bit now, and I'm going to change the focus and talk about working women. Now, why is it that
Mhm.
working women have a hard time asking for a raise?
Oh gosh. I you know, I think that there is still it's almost like skeletons of the past, of like our ancestors, where we're just happy to be at the table. It's like they only just let us, in and getting seats at in the boardroom, not so long ago. So it's almost like we are no, it's not almost like, but in society we're taught not to cause a fuss. That's not ladylike, to just, kind of know your place. And I think that part of it, and part of the organization, I volunteer with Lean In Canada, and it's the secrecy around a lot of information that is around, hiring and salary and how much
Mhm.
people are paid, right? I think if women knew how how much less they might be making than their male counterparts who are doing the exact same job, maybe not even as well as they are, the confidence would be there to ask for, what you're worth. But I think, again, it's arming yourself with the data. So one of the things that I always like my clients to do, so I help them challenge their thoughts, is um, write down on a piece of paper all the things that you currently bring to the table.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you're doing above and beyond what is, specifically called for in your job title? Are there any times where you have, hit your target and then exceeded it by 20, 30, 50, or even 100%?
Mhm.
And then look at that list, and then think to yourself, now, how can I argue against this list? So okay, yes, I came in 150% to plan, or, okay, I have saved the company $100 million. So taking that list and then trying to argue against your accomplishments to say, okay, this is why you aren't deserving of a raise. It allows you to face your belief that you don't deserve more head on, and then it almost becomes something that you start talking yourself into. It's like, wait, actually, I am deserving of a raise. But I think that it's also incumbent on organizations to create a space where women feel comfortable to ask for what they're worth. So one thing that I like to do personally when I'm trying to have those tough conversations is I set aside a time where that's the only thing I'm talking about in
Mhm.
that window of time. So it's going to your direct report and saying, you know what? I'm hoping that we can have a half-hour discussion about, my salary. And that way you can't wiggle out of it and think, I'm going to tack it on at the end of this
Right.
conversation. And then you allow who you're reporting to the opportunity to come prepared to have that kind of conversation with you too. But then the last piece, and I do this a lot with my business owner
Mhm.
clients, is I want you to think about what that raise would do for your lifestyle, right? What are the trips that you might be able to take? What are the organizations that you might be able to support and better serve? What's the debt that you can pay off, or
That's
can you
important.
retire 5 years earlier? Yeah. So I think or, how can you set yourself up financially to maybe be able um, to be more relaxed from a financial standpoint if you did ask for that raise. And I think that's important too, where it's, are you going to deny yourself that future that you so vividly want? Or are you going to say, you know what, I deserve to have that excess so that I can do Y? I think pinning it and seeing it face to face is really important.
What's important too for women to understand that in the October 2019 report that StatScan came out with, for every dollar a man made, a woman makes 87 cents. So we are already, working for less money. We have a disrupted work style because we have children or we're natural caregivers,
Mhm.
and we live longer. So we also have less money to live on. So we really have to take care of ourselves, which leads me to the next question. Female entrepreneurs, young women who are just starting out, will always underbid their value when they're bidding for a new job, thinking that they just want to get in. We need to stop doing that to ourselves, and we need to understand that everything we do is of value. So how do we go about putting in a bid for a new project and not undermining our worth and coming in really, really low just because we want to get the job?
Mhm. So, when it comes to pricing, and I've been in sales for over 10 years, that price is price is arbitrary. So there's nothing worse than, let's say they were willing to spend $90,000 on this project and you came in at 75. Wouldn't you feel robbed? They feel like they got a great deal because, oh, great, well, we were willing to spend 90, right?
Mhm.
So I have a really great book that I think I have it right beside me because normally I have it behind me, but it's a book by Chris Voss. I don't know if you've heard of it yet. It's called Never Split the Difference.
Okay.
He is a former FBI negotiator. He used to negotiate hostages all around the world. And I think that this is a really important book for women to read because it teaches you how to negotiate and to negotiate up and see where and essentially really get as much as you can out of the other person.
Mhm.
So one of the things that you can do is, create a range. So if you've got a project and you come in at a range. So it's push yourself for your lowest number to be a little bit more than than your lowest amount, and allow the other person to come up to the number that it is that you want them to come to. Because what happens, and let's talk about salary, for instance,
Mhm.
especially for young women, your next job tends to want to only pay you so much more than the previous role that you were in. So when you underbid yourself, it makes it harder for you to continue to ask for what you're worth as your experience and what you bring to the table increases. So I think that when you're trying to bid for a project, it's really important for you to sit down and think, okay, what am I really doing? How much am I really bringing to the table? And add an extra five or $10,000 to that number that you then you feel more comfortable doing,
Mhm.
and then see what happens.
Mhm.
Because a lot of time, the the fear that you have that someone is not going to accept your number, it's an irrational fear. And guess what? If you bid at, let's say, 60,000 and they say, "You know what? We were hoping to, spend 55." At least it's closer to the number that you actually wanted, and then you can negotiate versus
Right.
coming in at 45 and then them saying, "Okay, yeah, that works."
Yeah. Yeah. Because we tend to do that, and we need to stop, actually. I want to talk about
Yeah.
psychographics. It's something that you talk about. What is it?
Mm.
Explain it.
So, um, I like explaining psychographics by talking about demographics a little bit. So we often know demographics, which is where someone lives, their age range,
Mhm.
that sort of things. But psychographics is more about the mental, the people's thought process around why they make the decisions that they make and why they do what it is that they do, because when people make their buying decisions, they justify it with logic, but they buy on emotion.
Mhm.
So I want to buy this thing because it's making me feel this way. And now I'm going to go look for all the evidence as to why it needs to happen. It's like I fall in love with a car and now I'm like, okay, how am I going to convince my husband that this is a great family investment and not just something that I want? And so when you understand the psychographics, you're able to sell to that emotional element. So one of the psychographics that I often like to look at when I'm, you know, trying to sell to someone is, what is their intrinsic motivation? Is it a belief system, which unfortunately we're learning about a lot when that people's, decisions when it comes to maybe their religion or when it comes to politics, it's driving their buying behavior.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily demographics, it's just another driving engine that is influencing the way they're making their decisions.
Mhm.
So, is it a particular lifestyle? Is it people that like yoga, right? That's not necessarily a demographic per se, because there are people in their 50s who like yoga and people that are 17.
Right.
So, it's more about the force behind the emotional buying decisions that people make, that can influence them and that can cross demographic barriers.
That's interesting because you have so many people that are impulse shoppers because they're stressed and they just want that
Mhm.
short-term high. And then there's that
Mhm.
long-term stress and anxiety that's attached to it. There's so many different aspects when it comes to shopping, and as you said, the demographics, the psychographics. I mean, you can just go on forever.
Absolutely. And so when you identify the psychographics, I find that you can get closer to who it is that you are selling to or who you're trying to get a job, from, right? If you can understand intrinsically. So as someone who sold in corporate, I was thinking, okay, what are their pressures as a sales manager?
Mhm.
What are the things that they're under pressure doing? What are the things that they're worried about in order to keep their jobs? And then I would speak to those things in my interviews because that I'm trying to tap into something that is deeper and allows them to feel like, okay, this is someone who's going to have my back and allow me to, be more successful in my role.
So, what do women need to do to establish their profile and their voice online?
Mm. One of the things that women need to do is when people hear my name or they see my photo, what do I want them to think? What is the thought that I want for them to come to mind for them? So this is something that I went through as I developed my own personal brand online, where I started my consulting company because I wanted to change the way that we sell to one another. I was always very flattered that people were so pleasantly surprised at how I handled the sales process and what it was like to work with me. But it also showed me that there is clearly something very flawed that with the way that salespeople handle business. And so that's what I came into it. So I thought about as I'm establishing my brand, I'm like, okay, what do I want people to think when they see Belinda Aramide? When they see my name, when they have something that I have to say. And so it's first establishing what you want people to think of you when they see you. And then it's speaking up and sharing content and commenting on thought pieces and sharing your voice, right? Because how else are people going to know what it is that you think if you don't tell them? It's like being in an argument. Have you ever argued with someone who won't tell you what's wrong? It's very, very frustrating. So
It's not really an argument.
you have it is it. It is it. And so if you want to establish your presence online, it first begins with figuring out what do you want your online reputation to be? When someone sees your name, they associate you strongly with X. And then you start sharing what it is that you know, because guess what? I can promise you that there are a lot of people who have a lot less value to share that are just on their soapbox sharing all of it online. I'm sure we've all seen,
Yeah.
quote unquote those people. So, if you're able to string, two sentences together, you know, take take your space. There is a seat for you at the table, but you have to pull the chair out and you've got to sit on it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. A lot of women think if only I had the opportunity, I would go and do this. What words of wisdom do you have for women to get them to implement their dreams into reality?
Mm. You know, I've had the blessing of working with a lot of men with so much bravado. And I admire it so much because they come up with an idea and then they go out and they execute on it
Mhm.
without, the hyper judgment. And I think that a lot of times as women, we tend to hold ourselves back. And it's that fear of failure or that fear of looking silly. And, I just have to say that the only guarantee that you won't live the life that you want to live is by not taking action. The only way you're going to get what you want is by taking that deliberate action. And even if something goes wrong and you end up with egg on your face, I promise in about 57 seconds, someone is going to do something much more ridiculous and you'll be yesterday's news. So, it's you have to take that deliberate action every single day. It's not about perfect action. It's deliberate action. It's I'm doing this today in order to get myself closer towards my goals. It's like trying to save $500, $5 at a time. Each individual $5 feels like nothing. But, week after week, month after month, it slowly adds up. But imagine 25 weeks go by, you've saved $5, and 25 weeks go by and you don't save that $5. At the end, it's these small actions that end up compounding into something that's worthwhile. So you've just got to decide to go out and get it. Borrow from, our male counterparts and just freaking do it, like Nike.
I always say that. Just do it like Nike. Those were amazing words. And the key thing too is failure is okay, because the more you fail, the more it helps you build that foundation for success. So we all have to realize that, asking questions is important, and failing's okay, because you get up, you brush yourself off, and you keep going.
Yeah, it's a lesson, right? It's like, oh, won't put that much salt into the eggs next time. And then you move on, right? It's like, I think so often, especially as women, we're so hard on ourselves. And I think it goes back to what I said at the beginning, that it's, would you talk to your best friend like that? Would you allow, your best friend to talk about themselves like that? And if you wouldn't, then don't allow yourself to do that. It's okay. Mistakes are okay. It's like we teach toddlers. You fall down, you get back up. Pat them on the butt and keep moving.
Perfect words of wisdom. Thank you so much for your time, Belinda.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Liz.
Ladies, as Belinda has mentioned, LinkedIn is your opportunity to take your seat at the professional table. Don't be afraid to take advantage of it and pull out your chair. Always keep your profile up to date with your accomplishments and business team impact, and be open to connecting with people you don't know and initiating connections with professionals you don't know. The best time to build a network is now. If you like this video, please click like. Please read the disclaimer in my YouTube description. It is very important. And please look out for my next episode. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.